welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, March 4th. We are here live. Phone lines are open. It is a free-for-all this morning, so jump in and join us. 855-950-3835 or hit the call now button on your app. That will get you right in here as well. We'll get to those calls here in just a little bit. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by Brent Hutto from truckstop.com. We'll be talking about the market and what's going on with rates and lanes, all kinds of good stuff. Jump in and join us. We'll get things going here this morning. I've got a couple things I want to talk about while we're waiting for some calls. A little all over the board here, but let's get started with the Mid-America Trucking Show. I lost track. I know I've been to this show for almost 40 years now, 35 maybe. It's been a long time. I mean, I started going to the show when I first got into trucking. I was in Northeast Ohio. The show wasn't that far away. I can still remember the first time I went, sitting through a seminar about how to succeed as an owner-operator. And I was excited about it. I was young in the industry. I was trying to learn things. I can remember sitting through it, and even then, I didn't know a lot, but I had the feeling that something just wasn't exactly right about all the stuff I was being told in this seminar. It was put on by an owner-operator association that is long gone for good reasons. About 6 months after I said, I had another thought then too, even though I was really new in the industry and I had this horrendous fear of public speaking. For some reason, I had this thought about someday doing seminars like that. The crazy thing was, about 6 months later, that association was charged with, here's the thing, and this a lot of associations start this way. Many of them are insurance companies. It's really common in this industry. A lot of the associations are primarily insurance companies, and that's where they derive most of their revenue from. NAIT, OIDA, a bunch are insurance companies. This was one of them. But it turns out they were taking premiums from owner-operators, and there was no insurance coverage being bought. There was no insurance. And obviously, this association disappeared. That was a long time ago. Brent and I have talked about it. The Mid-America Trucking Show is where Brent and I met in 1999 when I did my first seminar. I'm thinking the first time that I went to that show may have been 1990. Could have been 89. It was somewhere around there. And then in 99, I did my first seminar there, sort of, by accident. I was supposed to be on a panel, told the story 1,000 times. The speaker just totally bombed, and I ended up finishing the seminar. That was the very first Partners in Business program we did with Overdrive. Volvo was our sponsor back in 99. Technically, I kind of still do that program. Partners in Business is still around. ATBS does a lot of those seminars now. I do them when I have time. This year, I will not be doing Partners in Business because what I really want to talk about on the show is the CMC. The other thing, though, I want to talk about the show, over all those years, it's interesting. You could always tell what the vibe at the show was going to be based on what was going on in the economy and in trucking and rates. I remember years where people are just happy and excited and the market was doing great. I remember years where probably the worst I'm thinking was like 08, 09. Those were some pretty rough years. The mood was completely different at the show. You feel it right away. What's interesting this year is that the market is really not in good shape. We're going to talk about it today with Brent. It's looking actually worse all the time. I want to see what Brent's seeing in his data. What I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks is not good. The numbers are coming out for February, and I thought maybe we had found the bottom, but I'm not so sure now. So we'll talk about that. So we're not in a really good market, but for some reason, there seems to be a lot of optimism and people looking forward to the show this year. Not sure why. Well, it just feels a little different this year that there's more excitement, more optimism. I know I'm excited about the show this year because we're now an official part of the Mid-America Trucking Show with CMC, Certified Master Carrier. It's the relaunch of the CMC, and we'll kick it off there at Matt's. We have a day and a half right before the show starts. So Matt starts on Thursday, around noon or so. They have an executive session that starts a little earlier, or I forget what they call it. But for the most part, we are right before the show. The CMC is all day Thursday and all day Wednesday, and half a day on Thursday, and then you go right into the show starts right then. We only have 200 seats available, and we can't increase it at all. That is set in stone. If we sell out, there's nothing we can do to add any seats. So we are well over halfway filled, I believe. So there are still some seats available, but you should get signed up. I will also tell you, this is a huge bargain. When I started the CMC, it was a 2-day program. This is a day and a half. That was back in 2005. I did my first CMC. It was 2 days. It was $750, and that was a bargain. This day and a half program is $100. The only way we can do that is we have a sponsor. Truckstop.com is kicking in and paying most of the expenses. And I will tell you, the cost of doing this has gone through the roof. It's always been really expensive, but with what's been going on with inflation and food prices, I was shocked at what it costs to put on an event like this now. So thanks to Truckstop.com, you've got an opportunity to get an incredible amount of information at a very, very low cost. And it's conveniently at the truck show, which you should be going to anyway. So this is a real win-win for everybody. Get signed up. If you have any questions, you can go to the Matt's, the Trucking Show website itself. Look under events. You'll find ours. It's easy to find. And you can just get signed up right there online. If you have any questions at all, call Tribe Care. We'll get them all answered for you, and we'll get you signed up. Looking forward to having a packed house. Now, if you are not coming, the CMC is now a year-long program. And this is where we kick it off at Louisville this year. But then it will continue for a full year. Now, you don't get the full year for $100. But this is still a real bargain. It's $1,000 for the entire year. We have a payment plan for you. You can pay $100 a month. So there's no reason not to sign up for this. And right now, with everything going on in the economy, this is a great time for this. That's why I'm so excited about this. Get signed up. If you have any questions, you can certainly call, talk to us here. Looking forward to it. A lot of other good stuff going on at the truck show. I got a couple things I'll be doing. I'll be doing my Friday show that week with Joel and Henry from the Truck Stop booth. That'll be fun. I've known Henry for a long, long time. I also met Henry at the Mid-America Truck Show. Henry was the owner-operator of the year for Overdrive. I think it was 2007. The other day I said it was 99. I thought I met Henry there that first year that I did my seminar, but I think it was 2007. So I've known Henry for a long time, met him several times. I have never met Joel. This will be the first time for Joel and I to meet, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll be doing the Friday show from the Truck Stop booth, so stop by and see us on Friday. I've just got some oddball stuff here. We've got some calls coming in. I'm going to get to them here in a second. I've got some stuff that would probably be better on Wednesday. it's health related. But what happens by Wednesday, since I only do a health show really once a week, I try to save all my health topics for that day, but lately I've been finding I have more topics than I have time, so I'm going to squeeze some in on the other days during my open. This one shocked me this morning. I had no idea about this, and it really bothers me. So we've talked about GMO foods, genetically modified organisms. Every time I talk about this topic, I get a bunch of emails and messages from people who grew up in agriculture or farming, and they tell me I'm wrong. I'm not wrong about this. It's shocking to me how many people in agriculture don't understand this. They think that GMOs are just like hybrids or selective breeding of plants. We take plants, we've been doing this for a long time. We take plants, you can do this in your own backyard if you know what you're doing. And you can take two varieties of a plant and you can cross-pollinate them and get a new variety. That's not that difficult. Gardeners and farmers and people have been doing it for a long, long time. I have no problem with that. It's a naturally occurring process. Happens in nature. We just kind of speed it up a little bit and control it. Now, it's not always used for good reasons. In fact, most of it isn't. Most of our produce now has been hybridized not to make them taste better, not to make them more nutritious or better for us. They do this for two reasons. One, to make them grow faster, and two, to make them last longer on the shelf. The first thing that surprised me when I started gardening, I was used to buying produce at the store, throw it in the produce drawer, and a week later, my broccoli still looks really fresh. And I know it took that broccoli a long time to get to me. I thought, when I cut a head of broccoli out of the garden and stick it in the produce drawer, it should last even longer because it was nice and fresh when I put it in there. Except the broccoli that comes out of my garden 2 days later, I don't even want to eat it. But that's natural. This stuff we buy at the grocery store, but again, that's not genetically modified. We're just talking about like cross-pollination, selective breeding, hybridizing, whatever you want to call it. GMO is so different than that. And again, I get people from agriculture all the time tell me, it's no big deal. It is a huge deal. In GMO, we are altering the DNA of the plant in a laboratory. You cannot do this in your backyard. We are taking genes out of many times we take genes out of an animal and splice it into these plants to create these GMOs. We've been told they're safe, but there's never been any real testing on this. I absolutely do not want anything GMO, and I had no idea that I've been eating something virtually every day for as long as my whole life. Now, I don't know when this started, but it turns out 90% of the cheese sold in the United States is technically genetically modified. And what I mean by that is there is an ingredient in there that is genetically modified. They don't have to label this. As much research on this kind of stuff as I do, and I had no idea this was going on. Cheese is a pretty simple process. I've made cheese at home. It's not that hard. There should be 4 ingredients in cheese. That's it. You have the milk, the cream, the salt, the starter culture, the bacteria, kind of like making yogurt. And we've talked about making yogurt here. Lots of you have done it. And then rennet. Those are the 4 ingredients in cheese. Now, the funny thing is, I always wondered about this. How could those same 4 ingredients produce so many different kinds of cheese? Have you ever gone to a Whole Foods and look at the cheese section? It's mind-boggling. Except all of those cheeses have the same 4 ingredients. What determines what the cheese will be is the starter culture. Just like we made different yogurts with different starters, that's how you get so many different cheeses. So it's really a simple process. 4 ingredients for all those cheeses. Here's the problem. The rennet. And here's what rennet does. Rennet separates the milk into curds and whey. The curds become the cheese. The whey is the byproduct. Rennet comes from animals, except I guess in this country now, it doesn't. The cheese in this country, 90% of it is made with a rennet that was genetically modified. It came from plants, and then they genetically modified it. I had no idea that was happening. That should not be allowed to happen without us knowing it. It's kind of crazy. What another health issue here, and then I'm going to do a little bit of politics, then we're going to get to some calls, and then Brent should be joining us. So I've been talking a lot about these crazy weight loss drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. The FDA is already approving new, more powerful drugs like this. This is the next big health disaster in our country. I am sure of it. These drugs are horribly toxic. They have crazy side effects. They are expensive, at least $1,000 a month. And typically, people are losing 15 or 20 or 25 pounds. And then that's it. Then the weight loss stops. Now, 25 pounds is a lot of weight to lose, except for the fact that most of the country is so obese that 25 pounds gets them nowhere near where they really should be. And if you stop taking this drug, you gain the weight back. So are people really going to stay on these drugs for the rest of their life to lose 20 or 25 pounds? It seems like it. And the cost. Some insurance companies are picking this up because doctors can now prescribe these drugs because the FDA has approved them for weight loss. Not all of them, but some of them. Ozempic and Wegovy, I think, are both approved. So we already have insurance companies paying for this drug, which means all of our insurance costs go up because of this. This is so wrong in so many ways, but it's getting worse because now Medicare is considering paying for these drugs. Medicare, come on. This to me just makes me absolutely insane. This will drive the cost of the drugs up even higher. Supply and demand is always a thing. So this will drive the cost of those drugs even higher. Here's their justification. And a lot of people will buy this and say, oh, what a great idea. They're saying, look, when people lose 25 pounds, they get healthier. So we're going to save money for Medicare. Well, maybe you should do some research or studies to see if it's really going to work. Do people get healthier when they lose 25 pounds on Ozempic? I don't think so. I think they get sicker. I don't think they get healthier at all. There are some horrendous side effects from these drugs. So this is where I can tell you exactly how this happened. This is the problem with how closely our government is controlled by big pharmaceutical companies. I will promise you, the drug makers, the big pharmaceutical companies are spending billions of dollars in lobbying to make this happen. It is just so out of control. This is going to be a huge health crisis. And it will really drive costs through the roof, especially Medicare costs. This should not happen, but it looks like it's going to. All right. We've got some open lines. Jump in and join us. I'll get to the calls here in just a couple minutes. 855-950-3835. A little bit on politics because there's a lot going on right now. Obviously, it's a presidential year. Tomorrow's Super Tuesday. Politics will continue to dominate the news, but what a crazy cycle. There is some good news, though. The idea that a state could take somebody off of the ballot, to me, is pretty insane for no real good reason whatsoever. Colorado took Trump off the ballot. Illinois is trying right now. Several other states have tried. The Supreme Court just ruled on the Colorado case. Now, Here's the interesting thing. A lot of people are going to say, well, of course the Supreme Court is going to vote for Donald Trump because he appointed several of, what did he get, 3 on the Supreme Court while he was in office? But look at the ruling, 9-0. Thank you, Supreme Court. 9-0. That's pretty clear that this should have never happened. Even the most liberal Supreme Court justices said no. That should not happen, and they are correct. This should have never been allowed, and I'm glad it's not. States can try this stuff. The Supreme Court stepped up and said, no, it's not going to happen. Now, I have to believe that will convince all the other states to stop the stupidity and let's just get on with the election. You're not going to take him off the ballot when he's actually the front runner right now on almost every poll. So this idea that states could take him off the ballot was just insane. It looks like it's not going to happen. That's a good thing. I saw 2 other news reports that were kind of interesting. One is that already Nikki Haley looks like she might drop out now. She was just saying all weekend that she's not going to drop out. She's going to stay in the race. It looks like she might be changing her mind now, which would indicate that she was hoping he just got taken off the ballot. And that's why she was hanging around. Now, the other rumor that seems to be flying here just this morning, I haven't had time to go verify this, but I saw a couple sources reporting it, that we may see Hillary back in the race. So a lot going on in politics right now. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we can talk about that. I think... Oh, one more thing. Since I was talking about Medicare and weight loss drugs, today is World Obesity Day. I have no idea who started this, but you can just about guarantee that obesity will now get worse every year, even worse than it's been getting. Think about all the things we wage war on. The war on drugs. Well, yeah, that's really helped a lot, huh? The war on poverty. Yeah, that's working. The war on crime. Every time we start a war on something, it gets worse. We're now starting a war on obesity, and with these drugs, the problem is going to get worse, I can promise you. All right, I'm going to get to the calls. Brent will be here in about 5 minutes or so, and Brent and I can take some calls together as well, so if you want to jump in, dial us up and join us, 855-950-3835. Let's go to New York. Trevor, good morning.
How's it going, Kevin?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Listening to you, listening to your voice cutting in and out made me think of a possibly low-tech solution for your issue. If I recall, you said you got a mic on your laptop that's trying to pick up your voice along with the mic you have you're talking into normally.
Right.
Well, how about you put some tape over the mic on the laptop so it
then you wouldn't be
tries to.
You wouldn't be able to hear me at all on the phone. That's the only reason you're hearing me at all on the phone is because it's going through if it didn't go through the laptop mic, you wouldn't hear me at all.
I mean, the mic for the webcam, because there's usually like 2 little mic ports up by. I'm not talking about the jack that you plug into your.
No, I understand. The external microphone on my laptop picks up my voice, and that's what you're hearing on the phone. Everybody on the app is hearing my voice coming through the headset nice and clear and loud. So, no, if I were to cover those holes, you would not be hearing me on the phone anymore.
Okay. That was just something I was thinking of.
Yeah, no, the other thing I could do, I could just turn that mic off. I don't need to put tape over. I can just turn it off. I could turn the volume down on it completely. The problem is you wouldn't be hearing me. We don't know why that's happening, and nobody can explain it. I have worked with audio on a laptop for a long time now, and this is you could not make this happen before. You should not be able to have your laptop pulling audio from 2 different sources like that without some sort of software causing it to happen. And so nobody's been able to explain it. Hopefully, I just checked this morning. I had to check with our programmers to see if I'm going to be able to use our software on my trip or not. That's kind of a big deal because when I leave here, I have to know what equipment I'm taking. I'm going to be doing shows on the road from hotels, from the truck show. I checked with the programmers. They are pretty confident our software should be ready by then. And that should solve this problem. Now, the other issue, I could make this better. If I would just stand here facing my laptop the whole day, I wouldn't fade in and out like that. But I wander all over the room. And that's why I wear a headset, because I don't like to be stuck in front of a mic not being able to move.
Right.
So for the most part, I know it's a little annoying when you're the caller on the line, but we managed to make it through. So we'll keep doing it and hope we get our software here soon.
Yeah. I'm hoping you get it up and running as soon as possible. I know that can take some time. But I wanted to talk about EMFs because you're talking about it a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what day.
Yeah.
But it was making me think, EMFs, technically you can block them with kind of like a Faraday cage type deal.
Right.
And I was thinking, well, I got an old house. I got paperwork that was built in 1900, and I signed a fancy piece of paperwork saying that one of the materials in it, or there may be a type of paint in that house that is toxic. It made me think, well, that's lead paint.
Right.
Well, lead's a type of metal. Wouldn't that, in theory, if you have lead paint, wouldn't that shield you a little bit?
No.
Or not at all?
Here's part of the problem. Many of these questions we technically just don't know. And the reason we don't know is because it is almost impossible to test for this. They did some really limited testing on this back when we were doing a lot of nuclear testing, but we didn't have the kind of electronics back then we have now. We just don't know. And here's the other thing. We say EMF, but that's not just one thing. How powerful was the EMF? How long did that charge last for? And an EMF can happen at least two ways. One is it could be a completely natural event, a solar flare that causes a mass coronal ejection. And what that means is a blast of energy comes off of the sun. Now, it happens all the time, but think about how big space is and how little we are. That blast has to be directed and timed so that it hits the Earth. So that is a little more rare. You know, we get little solar flares that hit us all the time. The last big one that we know of was 1859. So we know it can happen. It's fairly rare, but that's a natural event. We would probably get maybe 2 or 3 days warning that it could happen. Is we can usually predict this, and we do watch it. Like I said, I have an app on my phone that tells me when this is going on. We had a minor solar flare this morning. We have those all the time. It's not a big deal. But eventually a big one will hit us. It's just when. It's not if, it's just when it will happen eventually again. The other way that we're more worried about is you can explode a nuclear device in space. I don't know if it has to be all the way up in space. It has to be up in the atmosphere, and we wouldn't even know it happened. We wouldn't know. You wouldn't hear it. Maybe you might see something from some places. I don't know. But that blast of a nuclear weapon up in the atmosphere creates a giant wave of energy that can wipe things out. Well, how close were you to it? How big was it? It's very possible that, kind of like tornadoes, they hit one house and miss the one next to it. EMFs could have the same effect. There could be a car in one driveway that gets wiped out, won't start, and then another one down the street might run. We don't know. But a little bit of lead in some paint does not create a Faraday cage. You can go online and look, and I've seen instructions on how to turn like a shed into a Faraday cage or a barn. It's not simple, but it's not all that complicated either. But just having some lead paint in the walls isn't going to do a thing.
Okay.
Except lead paint is one of those things that is really dangerous that we're trying to eradicate. Lead is really, really bad for us, health-wise.
Yeah. I know that. I signed a fancy piece of paper saying that, hey, there may be lead paint in this house, just to let you know, when I bought my house.
Yeah, just make sure you don't chew on the walls.
Yeah, I know. I got spots where I got paint flakes flaking off stuff, and I know better not to eat it. I'm not that dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately,
I know I got it in the house.
Unfortunately, a lot of children stick everything in their mouth, and there have been many cases. That's why we work so hard to get lead paint out of everything now.
Yeah.
It's also why we got
some decent amount of work.
It's also why we got lead out of gasoline. It's why we have unleaded gasoline. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
What else you got?
I do have you talk about a barbecue sauce that you make. I said it was like 3 ingredients. What are the proportions for those ingredients, and what were those ingredients again? To refresh my memory.
So the ingredients are easy, and I'll actually make it 4. So it's a good no sugar ketchup, and there are several on the market. There's actually one right here from my hometown called Portland ketchup. It's what I use. I just forgot the name of the company that Mark Sisson founded and then sold to Kraft. They make a good no-sugar ketchup, too. I just can't remember their name right now. So it's ketchup, no sugar, raw apple cider vinegar, raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar, and blackstrap molasses, and then liquid smoke. Those are the 4 ingredients. As far as amounts, this is the beauty of this. It's totally to taste. So just mix them until you get something you like. I tend to, and then I add heat to mine. I add some sort of heat to mine, but that's not necessary. I tend to like very acidic barbecue sauces. So I go heavier on the apple cider vinegar and lighter on the molasses.
Okay.
But it's really just a matter of taste. Some people like it sweeter or milder or not so acidic. So you just mix those 4 ingredients until you get something you like.
Okay. I was kind of expecting a little more clear-cut answer than this kind of open-ended, kind of experiment on your own.
Yeah, that's how I came up with. Yeah, that's how I came up with it, and I just mix it the way I like it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to have to just go and experiment in the kitchen then.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. Well, that's all I had for you today, Kevin. Nice talking to you again.
All right, good talking to you. All right, it is time. It's time to bring in Brent Hutto from truckstop.com. Brent, good morning. Brent?
Can you hear me, Kevin?
I can. Good morning.
Good. Good morning. I was listening in, and it was kind of breaking up on my end. So maybe that was just the on hold being out there in the stratosphere somewhere.
We are still fighting with our phone system issues. Our software is almost done. I know I say that every week, but that's how software goes. You know, you're part of a giant software company. You know what how much trouble software can be sometimes.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, every time I ask the no matter what I ask the programmers, the answer is always 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, if we could solve things in 2 weeks, that'd be lightning speed.
I know.
It's tough when you deal with 100,000 of anything. So.
Yeah.
But it's good. But we're happy to fight the fight to help carriers out there be able to have access to the data. So I mean, we're certainly all for it. But things are good, man. How go? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to talk about something a little different here, and we've also got a call on the line about booking a load.
Fun.
So yeah, that may be a good one for us.
Okay.
And if anybody else wants to call in, phone lines are open. Brett and I will take calls today. 855-950-3835. So, we talk about relationships all the time in business, right?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Talk about relationships with brokers. They're your customers. Relationships with shops. It's important if you're going to own trucks. Talk about all the relationships. Business runs on relationships. It is. I don't even know how to state that strongly enough. Would you agree?
Well, yes, sir. I agree 100%. Last time I checked, trucking is still what I call a contact sport. You got to have people talking to people in order for things to happen. And in order to do that, you have to have a beneficial relationship or a working relationship with whoever it is you're getting what you need from, whether it's from the ship, if they deal directly with shippers or if they deal with a broker, or they deal with anybody, whether you're dealing with somebody trying to if your truck happens to break down and you need it fixed in 1 day or 2 days instead of 7 days, you got to have a relationship. You're trying to buy insurance. It's a relationship. It's all those things that, people are the things that run things, Kevin. And if you don't have a great relationship, it just means things are harder. And why make things harder?
Much, much harder. And that was, you just said what my point was going to be. Business is complicated. Things go wrong all the time. We just talked about technology and what a challenge technology can be. It changes so fast and there's bugs and things go wrong. Here's the difference. If you're dealing with somebody that you have no relationship with and something goes wrong, and it becomes a disaster. Nobody has any incentive to really try to fix it. Many times somebody would just rather cut and run. This isn't going to work. I'm out of here. Like you said, things get much more difficult. If you're trying to operate a business and you're not aware of how important relationships are and you're not building them, you will struggle. And you may even fail just because of that at some point. When things go wrong, that's when relationships are really important. You have a relationship, you're committed, so you're willing to work together to solve those problems. And those problems are always going to happen. It's shocking to me, and the reason I bring this up is because I spend a lot of time online. I try to post things that help people. And I have got a couple of groups right now that will push back on anything I say. It shocks me that they'll push back on this. About relationships, as though they're not important in business. That's their attitude. Something happens, they'll go, oh, look, see, that relationship didn't help you at all. Oh, yes, it absolutely did. This would have been far worse had I not had that relationship. And it's just shocking to me that people who are in business could even say something like that.
Yeah, that does make it difficult. You talked about the word commitment. And it's the things what you want is you want people to be committed to helping you wherever your situation is. And so I like to use the word in concert with commitment. I like to talk about investment. Who's invested in your success? And
that's a good word.
When you think about the greatest relationship, when you think about the people that have the greatest, your greatest relationships in life, if you happen to be married, it's your spouse. If you happen to have children, it's with your spouse and your children. So you have these great invested relationships that, you're going to be dedicated to it. And when it gets really hard, you're going to work even harder. You're going to do things with even more heart and passion, and to make sure that you create the best situation for them. And if you create an antagonistic relationship with somebody who can supply you something, like, for instance, in the situation we're talking about, maybe a carrier working with a broker. Look, not all brokers are great. I get that.
Right.
But
of course not.
If you're not trying to develop a relationship where they're invested in your success, you're never going to get the great rates you want. You're never going to get the best freight that they have, the consistent freight that they have, just because they're invested in you. And that's life. I mean, that's part of life. And if you look at it that way, Kev, then things they tend to work out when they need to.
Yeah, and we've talked about the rate thing before. That's probably the most important reason.
Oh, yeah.
But the other issue, we know that logistics are difficult. From the time we book a load till the time that load gets delivered and paid, there are 1,000 things that can go wrong. And when you have good relationships, you have somebody to help you fix the problems. We're all committed, invested. We want to make this work. But if you're not, it's easy when a problem happens to say, screw it, I got to move on to the next load, whether it's a broker, a shipper, whatever, because why would I spend a whole bunch of time trying to solve this problem or make it better when I don't know if I'm ever going to hear from this guy again? Why bother?
Right. Yeah, no investment. I don't have any investment in it.
Yeah. So there's a point to all this, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say that Truck Stop understands that, and Truck Stop as a company is pretty committed to relationships?
Well, yeah, we have to be. I mean, and we want to be. Second off, we have to be. I mean, the company started in 1995 by a guy who wanted to give the carrier access to all the data in the market that the broker had. And so he just saw an opportunity. He says, wow, these carriers out there don't have it. And so we want to be invested in that. And so in order to do that, we have to have that relationship with the carrier. And the thing for one of the things we do, Kevin, and this is one of the things that Truck Stop is really well known for, which is we try to listen as well as possible. You know, a good relationship is a listening relationship, and so we try to listen because the carriers have lots of challenges that we try to help with, and then they have lots of suggestions on improving the way in which we bring the data to them. And so if you don't have the ability to listen, then it's really hard to have a really good relationship. And so our job as a company is to listen as well as we can to the carriers that are in the marketplace and what their needs are to help them be able to run their businesses as efficiently and profitably as possible. But you can't do it if you're not listening. If you don't have that invested on listening, you're not listening. So absolutely.
Well, you know, one of the things that, and I've known this about Truck Stop, you can't work with them and not feel this and see it, know it. But one of the things that really convinced me how important this was to Truck Stop, we haven't talked about this much. We may have mentioned it once or twice. What's your title?
Well, other than being the chief fun guy, I'm the chief relationship officer. We're very committed to that. We even have a person, me, that is totally committed to the relationships we have with the carriers, with the brokers, with the people in the industry that help move this thing forward. So yeah, that's my title, man.
That was the first time I had ever seen that in a company.
Yeah, well, maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. This was actually a title that Paris Cole, our now retired CEO, asked me to take on after being the chief marketing officer and kind of changing and rebranding and creating a new look you have for Truck Stop. I mean, he asked me to kind of position into the field. You've been doing this since day one, April 1st of 2013. He goes, I want to make sure we have focused on that in the market for the customers, for the industry. So we're out there making sure we have the best relationships with the marketplace that we can, so we can help the most.
Yeah, that was what convinced me. When you have a position at the C-suite level that is there for one purpose, to foster and maintain relationships. That was impressive to me.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well,
and you're very good at it.
We just want to be that type of company. Well,
that's probably because you are the fun guy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I learned most of this, Kevin, comes from my dad. My dad Randy, who passed away 3 years ago. But my dad was that type of guy, and I, as a little boy, would go all over the country with him and traveling with him on trips. And I'd watch the way he cared for people and the way he cared for what was important to them and what was important not just in their business, but what was in their life. And so I just watched my dad, and I learned from him. He used to always say to me, he'd say, son, he goes, look, everybody has value. We all have equal value. He goes, find a way to serve people, and then whatever you need in your life will be taken care of. But it starts with serving people. And that's really the relationship, Kevin. That's really what it goes back to. That's what we're all about at Truck Stop.
So it's no wonder that you and I agree on these things and work so well together. You know the line that I stole from Larry Winget, give him credit for it all the time. One of the most, there are a million quotes. Good stuff, too. I love quotes. They're powerful. There are lots of them. And a lot of them have been around for a long time. Very seldom does somebody say something in a way that's so different and so powerful it should become a quote. But this was one of them. I think it may have been one of Larry's written a lot of really good stuff. This one, to me, may be the best. When the first time he said this to me, I had to stop. I don't think I said anything for a minute. I had to stop and let my brain wrap around what he had said. He said, discover your uniqueness. Your father said everybody has value. We do. We all have value. And a lot of us haven't even figured out what our value is. And that was Larry's first sentence. Discover your uniqueness or discover your value. And then the next sentence was what kind of blew me away. And then exploit it in the service of others.
There you go.
I just love the way he said that.
Times. Yeah. Amen to that. Yeah. And if we all would focus on serving each other, it's amazing how successful people we would all be. And just serve each other's needs.
Serve each other. And doesn't that require relationships?
Hard to do it without one.
Yeah.
You're going to need a relationship to know what someone's need. To know what someone's need is, you're going to need a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, good stuff. Hey, we're here to talk about the markets and rates and what's going on. I've been noticing a trend for the last week or so, and I'm wondering if you guys are seeing it in the data as well. It seems to me like the February data now starting to come in is kind of shifting and not in a good way. I thought maybe we were at the bottom and maybe things are starting to stabilize. I'm beginning to wonder now. In a lot of ways, February's numbers from a lot of stuff I've looked at did not look that great.
No, it didn't. It's just still trolling along the bottom, going down a penny here, a penny there, and making it more difficult. The load posting volumes have been basically the same for quite a while. So it's not a load issue. To me, it's a macroeconomic issue. What I mean, our big U.S. economy issue, that's the big issue. And it really comes around just consumer confidence, where people aren't as confident that the market is doing that great. And you see all the news out there with the different things, and they make people feel uncomfortable. Like, all the things going on with our border crossings and inflation and the challenges that are out there, and just a lot of the back and forth, it just makes people uncomfortable, and that relates into trucking, where we're not making any changes because the overall U.S. economy is just kind of rolling along at this low, predictable rate, and our rates in the market are kind of that way. And then you've got shippers that are putting a lot of pressure, the manufacturers are putting a lot of pressure back onto their transportation providers for lower rates. And it doesn't look, FreightWaves had a great article out there about the marketplace is still just kind of running along the bottom. And I'll tell you what, the thing that kind of struck me kind of crazy was two of the big leaders in the market, J.B. Hunt and Werner, said that the contract rates, now, remember, the contract rates were pretty good for a while for them.
Right.
The spot market was low, but the contract was high. Yeah, that even now, the one-way contract rates are so low, it's unsustainable for them. These are people that move, hundreds of thousands of things, not just one at a time. And so, that's something to pay a lot of attention to.
Well, yeah, here's something else we need to think about. These are carriers who can afford to move freight with only a couple pennies per mile in profit.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying that this isn't sustainable. What that means is
not sustainable.
They can't generate any profit on these rates. Mm-hmm. If they could make a penny or two, they would keep doing it. I mean, that's how these carriers make it. These big carriers make it on a couple pennies a mile is usually what their profit is. Not that big. Now they're saying there's not even enough profit there to make anything. That's a bad sign for the small carriers that we deal with because they live in the spot market.
Right.
Now, the good news
is it's a challenge.
Just because a mega carrier can't haul that freight and make a profit doesn't mean you can't. That's our advantage. And,
right.
We have some disadvantages, obviously. We can't afford to run for a couple of pennies per mile. We only have one truck, or maybe 10. And even at 10, you can't afford to do that. They can because they have thousands or tens of thousands of trucks. But we have to understand where our advantage is. And our advantage is being hyper efficient and being able to generate a profit on those rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. And that's one of the things. And I talked to a lot of the larger players in the market and even sort of the investor Wall Street types. And they're always like, well, what's going on with the operators, the small carriers out there, the owner operators? Are they going out of business in droves? And I'm like, well, not as much as you think. I mean, certainly some of them have left and gone to other parts of the market, but still a very healthy amount of small carriers and owner-operators in the market. Then it's because, just what you said, when you've only got one truck or two trucks, you can change your operating ratio pretty quickly.
Yes.
It's not, I have to figure out how to handle 5,000 of something. If I can handle 2 of something, and I can change that super quick on how I'm operating, I can look at different marketplaces.
Here's a good example of that. I at one point in my career, I was helping people primarily with fuel mileage. It's a big thing that I do. I've done it for a long time. And I started thinking, holy cow, if I could save a guy with one truck $10,000 a year on fuel costs, which I was doing every day, wasn't even that hard. You start to do the math. Why don't I go work with a fleet with 100 trucks? Look at how much money I could save them. And I attempted to go do that. I attempted to go in and consult with fleets on fuel economy. And the problem I found out pretty quickly was a fleet, certainly once you get over 100 trucks, but even at 50, it can be really difficult. It turns out that if I work with an owner-operator and I have a strategy for them to improve fuel economy, there's almost no reason they can't do it today. At the very latest, it might take them a week or two if we're talking about modifications, but we can do it pretty instantly. When I worked with the fleets, I found out a fleet of 100 trucks to implement a fuel saving strategy takes about a year.
Wow. Yeah. Fuel fuel prices change a lot in a year.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's hard to prove. It's hard to predict. It's hard to know what we should be doing because it takes so long to implement. And then you also had to be careful that these strategies didn't inconvenience the driver. Because their other big problem has always been what? Driver turnover.
Yeah.
So
the driver happy.
You have to be very, very careful that your fuel mileage strategies don't inconvenience or piss off the driver, because if they do, they won't work.
Right, and then correct, and then there's the cost there. So that's part of your cost structure. That's a big part of your cost structure. So absolutely, yeah. So it's this fuel game, this efficiency game, all these things. You got to go when you look at the marketplace. Like for instance, overall rates went down 1 cent from week to week in the spot market. They went on 1 penny. They were $2.34 last week, $2.33 this week, which means there was very little change. The spot market pressure went up because there's more freight in the market than there was the previous week, by about 40 or 50,000 extra additional postings of freight, and so it went up some. But in the end, and fuel went down 1 penny. Fuel costs went down 1 penny. So it's just kind of what we're finding is there's going to be a long, slower rebound back out. Now here's the sort of the good news in this. I know. You guys used to call me Dr. Feelgood back when the market was going crazy and things were doing great. So Dr. Feelgood's got to bring a little something.
That's right.
Here's the thing: we all know the first quarter of the year is always the most challenging quarter of the year, and then rates start to creep up through. By the time we kind of get to the end of March and we're at Mid-America, things start creeping back up. So you should start to see rates come up some, but it's just going to take a while for it all to adjust back out. And then of course, keep in mind that we're in an election year, so things will be up and down in election year from the standpoint of consumer confidence. But I think the likelihood of them going any lower is not necessarily going to be something that happens. So just because we are at the economic bottom of things, and to the point of what I said about the larger carriers saying they can't sustain these rates. In other words, and so it's one thing for the spot market to say, hey, we're not going to haul as much freight, or carriers to kind of back off a little bit. But it's another thing for really large players to say, hey, we can't take this freight. So if they start rejecting more freight to these one-way hauls, yes, more will come in the spot market, but it naturally will push rates up. And so because these large shipping companies and manufacturers, here's the thing, and this is the big secret out there, which is shippers do not, they default, their most important thing in a shipper is to get the goods to market.
Yes.
The second most important thing is the rate. It's not the most important thing, it's the second most important. So they've got to get it to market. So they will change their pricing after, and they will allow for higher rates or take higher rates.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think you're right about the bigger economic picture. Noel Perry put out an email, I think it was this morning or maybe yesterday sometime. And there had been a lot of talk about sometime in 2024 starting to see a freight recovery. He's starting to say the opposite now, that don't expect it this year. Doesn't look like it's going to come. That will probably kind of hang out at the bottom here for a while. And that's not as bad as it might sound. I mean, if this is the bottom, and I hope it is, we still have a lot of small carriers and owner-operators that are doing just fine. They've got good relationships. Mm-hmm. Their freight is still paying reasonably well. They're still pretty profitable. That this won't be a huge problem for them. But The reason I say it's not really that bad of news is if we were to hang out here for the rest of this year, I think what we do is we move more capacity out of the market that doesn't belong here anyway. And that's when I think we'll start to see the rates go back up, when we just keep washing out more of that, what I would call excess capacity that happened during COVID. We had new brokers, new carriers. I mean, the market just got flooded, and we still need to wash that out.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's in a sense, there's too much capacity. But we're in the United States. We're in the U.S. of A. And so people that want to stay in an industry that's a free and open market, then more power to you. I'm not telling anybody they need to get out of the market, but it is the issue with the lower rate is because you have a lot more carriers, for-hire carriers, inside of a marketplace. And so when there's more of anything competing for something, that usually drives the prices down. And that's typically what's going on with this. But this too will pass, as they say. It will change. It'll start to go back. But here's the thing, Kevin. This is the biggest reality that we'd like to tell the market at Truck Stop. And I know I try to preach to the marketplace, which is, don't expect it to come back to anything like we had during the pandemic. That was a
good point.
Lifetime event. It's a lifetime event. Look at what was 2017 like? What was 2019 like? And look at the rates and kind of look at maybe adjust for inflation or adjust for cost, those sort of things, and say, what did my business look like when I was running it in 2017 or 2019? Those were normal years. Sort of normal years. Look at those years. Those in the past, that's in the past, 4 to 5 years, and so or 6 years, and so look at those markets and go, okay, well, how do I operate, and where can I find the best profitability? And honestly, the freight rates that I'm selling now, these are just the posted rates. These are the negotiated rates. If you've got a good business and you keep a good relationship, you can negotiate higher rates.
Do you want a story about how bad the COVID money screwed up things, the rates specifically?
Yeah, sure.
So I told this story last week. We still have a handful of clients that we do all of their bookkeeping and tax work for them. We've been slowly trying to get out of that business over the years. We still have a handful. This is our last year. So I wanted to make sure the clients we have left, we close them outright, we hand them off to somebody else and make sure they get taken care of. So I've been reviewing a lot of those files. And so I was down there the other day, and I picked up a file to review, and on top of the file was the 1099 that shows the revenue for this carrier. And I looked at the number, and I said, hey, wait a minute. I said, how many trucks does this guy have? And they said, one. And I said, a team? They said, no, it's just one truck, one driver. Do you want to know what the gross revenue was? I said, this has got to be a mistake.
Oh, man,
this can't be right. But then I went and looked at all of the expenses, and I thought, well, those are odd, too. So this is one truck, one driver, and 127,000 miles. Slightly over the average, not all that much.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
$709,000.
What were they hauling?
Medical equipment during COVID. And I believe it was probably ventilators back and forth across the country.
I wonder how much of that was sort of, government hauling where there's been a crisis. So
probably all of it.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
You know this industry inside and out. Shippers, you know it from every angle. How many shippers would ever even think about paying a rate like that unless they were getting a bunch of money from the government? Nobody in their right mind. Why would you do it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like I said, to your point.
And by the way, this was dry van freight.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. They just put it, unique freight, but it was stuck in a dry van.
Yeah,
right?
it's just in a dry van. It doesn't need any special equipment or any special skills. You back up to a dock, they load it, you take it someplace else, they unload it.
Right.
He netted. This was an all-time record. I've never seen anything like this. $480,000. That was his profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Now,
Well,
you want another
well,
clue that this was probably all government money? And so I said, I'm talking to the guy on the phone, and I'm like, my God, this is just incredible. I've never seen anything like this. And he says, yeah, except there's bad news. He said CRST came in and took over the whole contract. Now,
He said, which one did?
CRST.
Okay.
Now, here's a even crazier statistic. He told me there were 80 trucks doing this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now the 80 trucks at CRST, or there are 80 independent trucks?
There were 80 independent.
Right.
Now CRST took it over. And you can guarantee they're probably getting a quarter of that rate, if that.
Yeah. During the pandemic, obviously trucks were really, really hard to find on all sides. And so I'm not surprised there's some of these people out there, these unique companies that did extremely well. We've all heard those stories on what they made and then even what they did with it. As a matter of fact, Kevin, this is the thing you told me about this, and our good friends over at ATBS talked to me about this, is that truckers were making so much money they decided to stop working.
Yes.
They just didn't work as much.
Right.
They just take a month off or 2 months off. So, which I was shocked by. But not now that I think about it, it's like, well, I get it. You want to enjoy what's going on.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It has really been a crazy market. There's no doubt.
Well, and you think about those super highs, and we all have a convenient, forgetful memory when we forget that, okay, all markets go back to normal eventually. We just think, okay, well, I made that much last year. Why can't I make that much the next year? And so this is why when you go through these what are called outlier markets, there's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers. You can read it if I just suggest anybody to read it.
I've read it. It's a great book.
And so outlier markets are incredible. You just can't plan for them.
Right.
You can't say,
or count on them.
That's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen again, because it's not.
Right.
Not anytime soon.
Right.
Prepare for them. Be ready for them. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so a lot of things going on. Hey, one of the things I'd love to talk to you about, because I saw this in the news about the potential about insurance. Can we talk about insurance just for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So I saw this out there, and I want to get your opinion on it. Okay, because it affects all of us. This is going to affect the entire industry if it goes negative. So there was a 2014 crash where a Werner truck was involved. And it has taken until today, 2024, for it to play all the way out through the appeals process and everything, and they have yet to rule on it again. But they're waiting to rule on it. I think the ruling will come out in the next week. That's as the documentation I read, where there's a no-fault accident for the most part. Now, people died in it. There was some passengers that one passenger died, one was severely affected, but really, you look at it's a no-fault thing, but the nuclear verdict, Kevin, is $100 million.
So is this Werner again?
This is Werner, correct.
So this is interesting. This is not the first nuclear verdict that was really controversial around Werner. There's another one that I talked about. Go ahead.
This was 7 years ago.
I know. The other one may have been just as long ago or longer. I forget the details about it, but this was another crazy one. Mm-hmm. A car, 2 adults, 2 children. 2 adults in the front seat, 2 children in the back seat. Stops in the travel lane just over a hill on the interstate. A Werner truck comes along. The adults had gotten out of the car and walked over to the side of the road and left the kids in the car. Wow. Werner comes over the hill, hits the car, and kills the children. But they were not cited. They said there was no way any driver could have reasonably seen this in time to stop. It was just such a horrible place to stop a car that Werner was not cited at all. The 2 adults, it was so egregious, the 2 adults went to jail over this. The adults in the car were charged. That's how egregious their actions were, and Werner was not charged at all. I don't remember the number, but Werner got hit with a huge tens of millions of dollars of judgment on this one.
Right.
And now they've got another case that's similar. They were clearly not at fault in this accident in any way, and yet they might get hit with $100 million. Now let's think about this. Who led the charge in this industry on ELDs? Werner had them probably, wasn't it like 10 years before we even talked about ELDs? Werner had been on them for a long time. Werner was really one of the most proactive fleets I know of, safety-wise. Now, maybe it didn't do any good. I mean, they still get into a lot of accidents, but it's interesting that they keep getting hit with these big nuclear verdicts.
Yeah,
when they're not even at fault. That's the crazy part.
The passenger car hit black ice, crossed over 30 feet of median, and hit the truck.
Right.
And the claim is that if the truck driver would have been driving slower, basically because of the bad weather, he wouldn't have been in that position, so they wouldn't have hit the truck. And I'm thinking to myself, Kevin, how in the world can you plan for the unplannable? That's not possible.
Can't. Right.
And so here's why I'm bringing this up. I'm not bringing this up. I certainly hope that. But first off, we pray for the family that lost any family members, and that's just a terrible thing. None of this is good. But the right decision needs to get passed down because it's just, I don't know how any law. I'm not an attorney. I'm not in that. There'll be a decision on this. Here's why I say this: if it happens to go against Werner, this will affect insurance for every single trucker out there.
Yes.
Because they will figure it into these insurance companies work on probability, and the probability of how much they're going to have to pay out. If the probability of how much they have to pay out goes up, and if this judgment comes against Werner, probability will go up, which means insurance costs will go up, and there'll be more pressure on the minimum amount of insurance you have to carry.
Yep.
Because it will say, hey, the consumer groups will say, see, look what happened. So my point is that we have to be very careful about this because the insurance industry, the trucking industry needs to look at it because it can change the cost structure, these nuclear verdicts. This is why they're so difficult for trucking.
Right. And we are a target of these. We are one of those industries that is a target for this kind of stuff. I just yesterday read an incredible book, just a novel, about this issue, nuclear verdicts, and it was a Grisham novel, and he's just an incredible writer. And this is not a new book or anything. It's been around a while. I just missed this one somewhere.
Right.
I could spend the next hour talking about this book. I must have went through, I can't tell you how many times I had to rethink my thoughts on all this. I was pretty clear on how I felt about these product liability cases and nuclear verdicts, and I'm rethinking it somewhat after I read this book. That's all I'm going to say, but it was pretty powerful for a novel. And it's interesting that this topic came up for us today. Look this up and listen to it. I'd love to talk to you about this book after you listen to this. It's called The Appeal. Now, this is more of I will tell you there's something that's been in the news the last couple of years, and this book was written long before this, but it's really very similar to what this book is about. That's the Camp Lejeune water case.
The which case? I'm sorry, you broke up.
Camp Lejeune, the water issue that
Camp Lejeune. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's been a big deal. I mean, they've absolutely proven that the water was contaminated there by these industries for like 3 or 4 decades. And now the floodgates have been opened. I mean, every attorney in the country is looking to pick up somebody who lived near Camp Lejeune during those years, and the lawsuits are flying. And that's similar to what this story is about.
Got it.
But it gets into the whole
look into that.
Nuclear verdict. Here's an issue that I had never, ever thought about before, and now I would rethink. Never really dawned on me. Our Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, they're appointed. But in a lot of states, Supreme Court justices are elected. And you wouldn't think, you would almost think, well, that's a better thing. We're the people. We should be allowed to. I am absolutely not at all for elected Supreme Court justices anymore. What a crazy, you got to read it. Yeah, it's just a crazy story, but you can absolutely see that it's happening in those states.
Well, send it over. Yeah, no doubt. Hey, the reason I brought up the thing about the insurance was because of that thing in the article that had come out, and of course, child manufacturing industry. But what's interesting is that we just did a bunch of research at Truckstop, and we do research on carriers and on brokers, and we had several thousand carriers respond to sort of like what's going on with their business. And I got some very interesting stats. What carriers, the top issues facing carriers is that other than fuel and rates, okay, that's a different issue. Okay?
Right.
The number one thing, 61% of carriers, and this is several thousand carriers that respond. We get incredible responses from Truckstop customers. 61% says insurance costs are number one concern.
Wow.
Now
that's
broker issues, which is definitely fraud. You know, the rate transparency was number two, and 4. Rising equipment and labor costs was number 3, but number 1 at 61% was insurance.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to say that, that's fairly new. I don't remember. You know, we do these surveys every year. There's all kinds of companies that do them and put out the results. I don't ever remember insurance being number 1.
Me either. You know, over the past, though, I tell you, since I've been in logistics, since 2013, I've been in logistics, I can tell you that when I go to the shows like the TCA and all these other shows, the ATA and the different shows, what I hear from the panels of people speaking is a lot of it is about the insurance cost has now become, right, it's like one of the biggest concerns, even against, like in fuel costs. So that's why we excluded fuel, because it's always the number one thing that comes, because how it relates to rates. But the idea is that insurance now is getting to the point, like from a cost standpoint, kind of equal from a priority standpoint.
Well, you know, I just a couple of years ago I went and did that conference. I did the keynote at 2 conferences, one in Memphis and one in Nashville, and that's all. The whole conference was just about insurance. And it was absolutely shocking, the stuff I learned at that conference.
Yeah, I got to see you speak at the one in Nashville. That was great. Yeah, you had a full room of people listening to you. That was fantastic. Yeah. So, well, I will say what is also unique in this is like broker issues. In other words, double brokering, fraud, things like that, and all those things were 2 and 4. So that was 58%, very close, 58 and 42% on that. Yeah.
I was just going to say, when it comes to the broker fraud, transparency, all those issues, you and I solved that this morning. Relationships.
You broke up. So, right. That's right. There you go. They know you and you know them. It's hard to be a fake.
Exactly. It's pretty hard to commit fraud when you both know each other and you're dealing with each other over and over and over. I mean, that is the simplest solution to the fraud problem. Just work with people you know.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I will say this, that within that fraud question, 90+% are either extremely concerned or somewhat concerned about fraud. So obviously it's the big topic out there. But it comes back to, if they know you and you know them, it's hard to fake it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's hard to get taken. So your point about, really knowing who you're doing business with.
Well, and then somebody's going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm new. How do I know who I should be dealing with? Well, there are ways, and I will say, I believe Truckstop's been the leader in this, in coming up with new technologies, new methods, new everything to fight this. So even if you're brand new, there are still lots of tools to help you get in, find good brokers, start to build that relationship with them, and then just stick with a couple. And the whole fraud issue becomes a non-issue for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it does become a non-issue. I'll tell you one other couple things, and this is kind of unique too, and this is something that carriers need to know, and I really appreciate just even being on Let's Truck with you to talk about this, is that most carriers don't know this, that there's over 40 different pieces of information that the broker is looking at out there to determine if that carrier is the carrier they want to use, and is it a legitimate carrier? Do they have all the qualifications? 40 pieces of information that they've gotten to an automated tech platform that they're looking at. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the carriers said to us in this research as well, they said that the most desired feature that they want is the ability to maintain their reputation of their authority. 89%, almost 90% said that's the most important thing, because they don't have the same technical ability. A small carrier doesn't have the same technical ability as a broker does to be able to look at information, but they want the right information to be out there on them.
Right.
So they're not evaluated incorrectly.
Yeah,
so this
point.
is a big deal.
Yeah,
so maintaining the reputation of authority, that's super important. Yeah. So I'll bring that up just because these are tech things that we look at all the time that we want to build into the system that help the carrier. And I say that just because this is what they said to us. So this represents a huge number of carriers. Yeah, huge number of carriers.
Excellent. All right. Hey, what do you say we take some phone calls?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was a gentleman that in the beginning that wanted to talk. Let's do it.
Yeah, we got a couple of them now. Let's go to Baltimore. Kim, welcome.
Hey, Kevin. Hey, Brett.
What's on your mind today?
First thing I want to say is I'm doing well. Hey, talking about that automated system there that you were just talking about, the brokers put you on automated.
Yes, sir.
Well, the broker clicked me onto 5-minute text messaging. So they sent me a message every 5 minutes, and it was supposed to be 15 hours. So text message. Hey, I'm logged on to the tracking app. Why do you keep sending me the information? He's like, we're not. So I screenshotted him, and it was like every 5 minutes.
My gosh, what a drag. What a drag.
So rather than getting pissed off at the broker, I'm just like, hey, we got to fix this.
Yeah, that's
right.
Kevin,
we could label that under
technology
glitches.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I want to say suspect to a caller that you had the other day that had never heard about you, but he's running the KR scan gauge and he uses profit gauges.
You know, that caught me off guard too during that call, and I almost stopped to ask him about that, and it was just a busy day. But that was my first thought when he said that too. So Brent, we were just, I forget what day I was on. It might have been Friday or not sure. But guy calls and he says, hey, I just found you like 2 weeks ago or something. A month maybe. It was really recent though. So he was asking about things, and I was talking to him about the CMC. And throughout the conversation, he dropped something about, well, my scan gauge said this. And I thought, well, that's odd. He didn't know who I was, but he managed to find a scan gauge somewhere, because that's ours.
Right.
And then he dropped something about profit gauges, too. And I thought, well, this seems odd. The guy didn't even know who I was 2 weeks ago, and he's got two of my products.
Right.
So I'm not sure what was going on with that call. But you're right, Kim. I caught that too. That seemed a little odd. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Matt's doesn't open until Thursday, but your show starts. Your CMC starts Wednesday.
Correct.
Where do we get the badges? Where do we have some kind of badge? All I have is an email.
Brent, you may know more about this, but the way I understand it, there's going to be registration that morning for the CMC, and
yeah, you'll be able to pick it up. Yeah, the registration will be there. It's open in the morning. Kim, I've been going to Mid America since 1998, and they start setting that show up on Monday, and because it's so big. And so there are people there at registration that you'll be able to pick your badges up. But I'm sure of that. If not, then I'm sure that they will be sent to you via mail.
Okay.
And keep in mind
how about
this
semi-truck parking out in the field. Will that be open?
Yes, that will be open as well. So keep in mind this is not us running a CMC that just happens to be in Louisville the day before the trucks. This is an official part of MATS. Mm-hmm. So MATS is handling parking and registration, and this is a pretty big deal for MATS. They've never really done anything like this before. So between MATS and Truck Stop and Let's Truck, as far as I can tell, everything is handled on schedule, and this should go pretty smoothly.
We got it going on. Hey, so the reason I called, I'm a owner-operator leased onto a carrier, and I have a dispatcher, and we have dedicated freight that goes from Indiana to upstate New York, and we have some that does Baltimore, Boston. I don't typically do that. I just kind of filled in for a guy. Well, my dispatcher had an emergency. He had to jump on a plane and, for some reason, fly to Florida. I won't know until later. So he's like, you'll have another dispatcher, and they'll talk to you soon. He's like, if you want to, go through some of the old emails and just start cold calling brokers. So I did that. After about 40 minutes or over 20 calls, I finally got to a guy that recognized me. Picked up before, used him a few times up in New York. And I'm like, hey, Ryan, I've hauled freight for you before, but I'm not in New York. I'm actually down by Baltimore. You got anything?
Right.
He's like, no. He's like, wait, is this Kim? I'm like, yeah. He's like, let me look. So right away he was going to say no because I was just somebody cold calling. But because
That's
maybe
right.
my name is Kim and I'm not a girl or female. Maybe my name's stuck in his head and I have a weird way I speak. So anyway, I got this load that picks up. It's only about 30 minutes from where I was sitting. It delivers straight through the night, but it's almost $4 a mile. You know, I find that these shorter little hops pay a lot more than, you know, if I want to get all the way back to Indiana for my next load. So we got to plan that out, like what you're talking about, multiple pickups, or not multiple, but, you know, doing more shorter rather than the longer one. Sometimes that works out because you just can't get the price that you want going all the way over to Indiana. That leans pathetic. So that's what I wanted to call. I was pretty excited. I knew the fun guy was going to be on today, and I talked to him and said, hey, look, I booked my very first load.
Hey, Brent.
Well, Dave, I like that you call me the fun guy. That's great. Yes, sir.
We have another partner company that we work with, and the CEO, that's kind of like his official title, the fun guy.
Is it really?
Do you know why?
Why's that?
They sell mushrooms.
Oh, there's so much. Oh, well, there you go.
So the fun guy.
Well, the fun guy. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's so funny, man. Well, that's exciting. So, Kim, thank you for the compliment. I'll tell you, thank you for bringing up to the carriers that are listening. Hey, make the phone call, get somebody on the line, make sure you create a relationship immediately. You're like making sure they knew who you were, and you got an excellent piece of freight. And you're right. Sometimes those shorter hauls can gain you a whole lot more. I was just looking at, I published this data, the top lane changes in the last week. There was one from Dallas to Tulsa that went from 207 to 236. So it had a 29-cent increase in 1 week, week over week. There's that's a dry van lane. I looked at in the flat van lane. There was a one from Phoenix to Laredo, or Laredo to Phoenix. It went from 208 to 261 in 1 week. That's a big change. That's 53 cents.
That's huge.
So the point is that keep looking in lanes. Just keep looking in lanes. Certainly organizing by rate is one thing, but organize by your favorite broker as well, or somebody that knows you. Because you're right. You said, "Hey, do you got anything?" And all of a sudden it was no. Then all of a sudden it was a yes, really quick. It's like, "Oh, is this Kim? I know you. I trust you. I got to get this done." So fantastic work, man.
We lost. I'm not sure what happened. We lost all of the callers all at the same time.
Oh no!
The call that we were on with the call. I know.
It's those sunspots you were talking about.
I know it's the solar flares, or it's might be the Iranians dropping EMFs on us. I don't know.
I hope not.
We lost all our calls, so if you want to call back, we certainly have lines open right now. 855-950-3835. Brent, I just looked at the clock. We got to let you get back to your busy day. What exciting stuff do you have going on right now?
Well, I'm getting prepared for several things in the market. Certainly for Mid-America, I'm getting prepared for that. Getting prepared for what we're doing we got a couple of big tech products that I'm looking forward to talking about in Mid-America. So we're working on those. I have a project that I'm working on where I'm calling our top 170 accounts, and which will be kind of fun for me. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag of what I'm doing on that one, but once I find out, I'll let you know as far as like the data I get back.
Oh, good.
And just continuing to talk to the marketplace about and my other thing is, I got to be on the phone with Kevin Rutherford later sometime this week about making sure we get everything lined up for the CMC.
Yes.
Super excited about that and what's going on. I'm looking for a current number of how many registrations we've got. Do you know that number?
I don't. I said I know we're over half full, but I haven't seen the official number yet. I do want to. I was talking about it this morning. trying to let people know what an incredible bargain this is and why. So my original CMC that I started in 2005. So almost, can you believe that? 2005. Almost 20 years ago. I had no idea the CMC we had been doing it that long. But think about how much everything has gone up in cost since 2005.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So back then, it was
year and a half.
it was a 2-day program, and it was $750. Back then, with inflation, that would make it $1,500 now, easy. I mean, some things have doubled easily since then. But, and this is completely because of our partnership and our relationship and the generosity of truckstop.com and how important this is to them, because you guys are footing a big, big part of this bill. We're not doing 2 full days. We're doing a day and a half at $100. I mean, we could tell people that isn't even paying for the food we're going to provide them. Right?
Not even close.
I mean, that's how expensive it has gotten to put on an event like this, because of food and cost have gone through the roof. So don't miss this opportunity. Even if you don't think you're going to do the whole CMC program for the whole year, don't miss this opportunity.
Don't miss this one. I mean,
what a great chance to get to the truck show, which is an awesome 3 days, and while you're there, be able to go to an event like this at this price. But again, that's thanks to you guys and your commitment to this.
Well, thank you, and to Toby Young and Mid-America, who's our partner putting this thing on. I mean, the whole point is to create a place for owner-operators to come to get and fulfill their start or begin to fulfill their yearly needs in education and business planning, and then go right into what's the equipment and needs into it, what the show provides, and all those things at one time. And we're just thankful that Mid-America is doing this with us, man. This is a big deal, this is just the beginning.
And it really is. Having the CMC at Matt's really is the best of both worlds. I mean, the CMC's always been a great program, but it did start to get really expensive to put these kind of events on. And by partnering with Truck Stop and Matt's, we are able to keep that cost way down and provide incredible amounts of value. And then you have the opportunity to go to the biggest. Is this the biggest truck show in the world? I know it's the biggest in the country.
I don't know another one that's anywhere close. I mean, they have over 80,000 registrants, and so I don't know anybody else that's even close to it. Yeah,
and number
from a show floor standpoint,
the number of vendors,
there's nothing as big. Now there's a big truck show that happens in Germany that Europe puts on, but it's every other year. So look, the United States is the largest freight market in the world. I think it's 44% of all the freight movements happen in the contiguous 48.
Wow.
So yeah, Mid-America is the biggest show. I don't know anything else that would need to be as big as because this is the biggest market.
Yeah.
And so that makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, I don't know that I've never been to the one in Germany. I always wanted to go to it, but I don't do much business in Europe.
Right.
So I have a big need to go.
Right. All right. Anything else we need to cover today, Brent?
No, buddy, we're in good shape. Market's going to, like you said, market's going to stay about the same. Be efficient, find a way to cut your costs and be efficient and looking for freight, as Kim just talked about. Keep those relationships, man.
Well, speaking of that, if you want to learn how to be efficient, where might you go to learn something like that?
Well, you certainly can go to Let's Truck for great advice and listen to Kevin Rutherford, and then we have lots of teaching to help carriers understand how to use a load board, what's the most efficient way to use it, because everything you're looking at gives you an opportunity to make you money. So what's the most efficient way to do that? So it's just the combination of really just out there looking at your resources that are provided for you. To me, that's that's where you find that efficiency.
Yep. And if you want a great opportunity coming up here in just a couple weeks, get to the CMC, get to Matt's. It's all going to
Oh,
be
my
there.
gosh. Yeah, get them. Yeah.
One other thing, though, before I let you go. I'm also,
Okay, what you
and
got?
this
Yeah,
is
man.
kind of getting overshadowed by Matt's, but I'm pretty excited about what you and I are going to be doing at TIA.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing that. You brought this up last week, and I appreciate you bringing it up again. Yeah, I'm very excited about being on stage with you and talking about how to best work with carriers to the broker audience. The Transportation Intermediaries Association is the largest association for brokers in the world. I think they have a couple of thousand members, so a couple thousand of the best sort of top brokers in the country are part of this association, and they have a great event called Capital Ideas. And so Kevin Rutherford and I are going to be live on stage to talk to brokers about how to best work with carriers. And you made the suggestion last week, which I thought was really smart. If you've got the opportunity and you wanted to create great with close relationships with brokers, there's going to be a couple thousand of them in Phoenix
That's right.
in April. So if you wanted to make your way to Phoenix in April, it's probably going to be a pretty good spot for you to kind of maybe invest in and create more for your business. So I thought that was a great suggestion by you.
I clearly, I love doing things like Matt's. I love doing owner-operator events. That's really, my sweet spot. But I got to tell you, when I do go to these broker events, I feel like a celebrity.
Right.
Like the brokers are just
You
so
are. You
hungry to hear about small carriers and how to
Yeah.
work with them. And I just feel like sometimes, even though, it might just be a small breakout or whatever, when I am at these broker events, they are really hungry and excited to talk about small carriers.
Oh, without a doubt. They're very, very excited to talk about it. And it's because if they don't get a piece of freight on a truck efficiently, they don't make profit either.
Yeah.
So they need to understand how to do business with carriers in the greatest way, because that's how they make their profit. It's not how they make the profit for a broker happens in two areas. Number one, it's how they secure, or what they call buy the freight from the shipper. So they got to buy it right, but they also got to sell it right. So they're selling it to you as the carrier. They've got to sell it right to you. So in order to do that, they got to have a great relationship with you. So I'm excited to be on stage with you, man.
Yeah, good. All right, Brent, we will let you get on with your day, and we will do this again next week.
Okay, buddy. Looking forward to it. Thank you, sir. Keep on trucking.
Good talking to you. All right, we have open phone lines. I will wait just a couple minutes. If we get some calls, I'm not sure what happened when we had calls, but I would assume the phone lines are working. So jump in and join us, or I'll wrap this up for today. It's up to you. 855-950-3835. Like I say, I'll hang out here just a minute or two to see if we have some calls coming in. If not, I'm going to wrap this up today. Rest of the week, as far as I know, is pretty normal. I think we'll be here every day this week. I'm not sure if we have any guests this week or not. Tomorrow will be the Power Hour, as always. Wednesday, Destination Health. I have some ideas for Wednesday. Thursday will be a free-for-all in Rolling Toe, and then Friday will be a Friday free-for-all in technology and efficiency. We'll also let you know the week of Matt's, the only show I will be doing that week is Friday. I'm busy all week traveling and the CMC, so the only show we're actually going to have on that week will be Friday. We will be broadcasting live from Matt's from the truckstop.com booth. So Henry and Joel, probably Alec too. I never asked if Alec is coming. But for sure, Henry and Joel will be there in the booth with me. So really looking forward to Matt's this year and seeing everybody there. If you're going to be there, get signed up for the CMC. You can go right now. Doesn't take long to get signed up at all. It's truckingshow.com. That's where you will go to sign up. Truckingshow.com will get you to the Matt's website. That is the website for the truck show itself. And then just look under events. It's pretty easy to find. It's pretty visible on their site. You will see the CMC sign up. And I got to tell you, this is, I have never put out this much information for this low of a price ever. Like I said, going all the way back to 2005. We used to charge about 10 times more than this. So great opportunity, and also great now that we've combined this with Matt's and you get the CMC and the truck show all in one shot. We've got some calls coming in. I'm going to take a call right now. Let's go to Kentucky. Steve, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for taking my call. I had called you because I've been meaning to call you probably about over 2 or 3 years. I'm a long-time listener, but I had to apologize to you during COVID because I was going down the road. You know how when COVID hit, they was talking about vaccines and
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff. And that stuff there, and I can remember I was in other side of eastern Kentucky when they finally come out with this miracle, they're supposed to get rid of COVID. And I was screaming at you. I was, like, cussing you. I was like, this idiot don't know we got, this effing, miracle drug. And then I'm not a guy that takes, vaccines. I don't take shots. I'm with
Right.
you with the immunity. I let my body heal
Right.
itself because that's what it's designed to do. But I had to apologize to you because I was screaming at you until you really educated me on vaccines and how it takes years for them to.
Yeah. And honestly, the more I will tell you, I was kind of on board early on saying, hey, wait a minute, be careful about this thing. There's a lot of things I don't really like here. But honestly, since that time, I am much, much more negative on all vaccines now of any kind. So it has even changed my mind about vaccines. But let me tell you this. I got this really wrong, too. If you remember, I was probably the first person in the industry in 2020 to say that they should cancel the truck show. Remember this? COVID started right before the truck show, and we were within about 2 weeks of the truck show itself when they canceled it. And I was one of the people saying, hey, look, this could be dangerous. It looks like it is dangerous. Early on, we thought it was. And I was one of the people calling for closing the truck show. I got that one completely wrong. We shouldn't have closed anything over COVID.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I didn't know, but just because I was uneducated, and I was like, and I was talking to my wife, I was like, am I missing something here? And then I was like, let me go do some investigation. Don't let me take Kevin's word for it.
Right.
Let me investigate,
Good.
but let me look it up for myself. And then when I looked it up, and I've had COVID 3 or 4 times, and it's kind of like the flu for me. I'm 48, and I played ball, been active all my life, and I've never really let myself go. So the first time it was kind of bad, but it wasn't nothing that I couldn't get over. But I understand how older people, how it affects them, and that. I was just like, man, I'm glad you educated me on it because I was screaming at you over that phone.
Yeah, it was dangerous for older people, whatever it is, if it is just some other form of the flu. I mean, but even for them, there were much better ways of solving this than masks and vaccines. We could have looked at nutrition and vitamin D levels and sunshine and all kinds of things. Now, I will say, I just got COVID for the first time. Not even over it yet.
Yeah, I remember that.
Tomorrow is 3 weeks. I'm still not completely over this. It was pretty rough for me. I mean, the first 5 days, I didn't get out of bed.
Well, my doctor gave me the same thing he gave you.
Yeah.
And one of the other doctors asked me what did I take. They wouldn't even prescribe it because they said it wasn't good. But the thing about it was, I think I took 2. I still got the rest, but a lot of doctors won't prescribe it because they said it affects your heart. They just didn't want to prescribe it because they know what it would do, even with the ivermectin.
Yep, I agree.
So that's just where I had an issue. So like I said, you didn't know I really cussed you out going down the road. And like I said, I dropped several F-bombs just because I really just wasn't educated on it. And then I had to read it. So I was like, you know what? He didn't hear it, but my conscience is eating me. I need to apologize to him because I'm a loyal, long-time listener. I've been listening to you ever since you came on it, at night and stuff. So I've been listening for a long time.
Hey, I appreciate it, and thank you for the apology, but it's not necessary. You did exactly what you should do. You heard something
Well, I
that's...
was about to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to make a mistake.
But then you stopped, thought about it, and said, well, I'm not just going to blindly trust him, but maybe he's got a point. Let me go do a little research. That's exactly what you should do. I tell people all the time, you should question me. If you doubt something I say, question me, make me explain myself.
Yeah, that's why I didn't get it. I didn't call you that day because I was probably going to try to call in, but I needed to sit there and hit the reset button. Like, well, let me think about what Kevin's saying. Let me research this. And like I said,
Good.
I'm not that guy. So, but like I said, I'm not going to hold you. I just want to, like I said, I did it in public, but nobody. They were probably looking at me in the truck. It was like, what is this guy doing? This guy is having a meltdown because all the information they was forcing down is trying to force us to do things with our own body. And I was not on a board with that. You can't make me do anything with my body. This is mine.
That's right.
Yep. But I appreciate you and keep doing what you're doing, Kevin. Long time listener, probably 10, 15 years. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. All right. You know what? We're going to wrap this up. Really, I will tell you for the next several weeks, if I don't have calls, I'm going to end things pretty quickly. If I have calls, I'll take them. We'll stay here for 3 hours if we have calls. But if we don't, I'm going to move on pretty quick because I got a lot of other stuff I could be working on right now. So we're going to wrap this up today. We will see you back here tomorrow for the Power Hour. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.